Outside, a breeze was trying to slog through the humidity. Tada and I left the party and started home across the suburbs of Mae Sot, Thailand, late, my having promised to protect him from feral dogs taken care of. All was silent, but for the occasional barking we stirred up as we passed them in the dark. I think Wada was asking me for money, I said. Really? Tada's face was pained. He hated when his fellow refugees from a Burmese minority called the Karen asked me for money, just like he hated taking it from me, even when it was for his personal safety or food. What did he say? He was talking about how he needed to get more education, but he didn't want to resettle. I think he wanted me to tell him I could get the United Nations to accept him for resettlement and then pay for him to go to America and then pay for him to go to school and live in America and then pay for him to come back to Thailand. These requests were motivated as much by a gross overestimation of my personal wealth as by desperation. 2 days prior, Aina had asked me for money too, however much I thought would be necessary to bring a load of Karen children out of the jungle, build them a shelter and refugee camp, and indefinitely keep them in school supplies and supplemental rations once they were installed in it. It was hard to explain to him that I couldn't afford it because he'd asked me just a day before how much money I made, and I said 80,000 baht, which is like $2,000, but to which he replied, after letting that sink in for a minute, I don't think in my life I will have that much. He'd shown me all the money he had in his life currently, the only kind of money a lot of Karen refugees had in their lives, passed down from grandmothers from times that were more prosperous, when Burma was still part of British India, 2 ancient rupees folded in a cloth. I told Tada how bad I felt turning Anon down. I also told him, several times laughing, about how anytime my roommate Esso saw me pull out my wallet, he said, "Can I have some money?" Now, Tada was frowning. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't be sorry," I said. "I mean, I get it. If I had no options, I would ask anyone I met for money." "What did you tell him?" Tada asked. I didn't tell him anything. He didn't really ask. He just kept talking, hoping I would offer, I think. Tada and I had turned out of the subdivision and onto the highway toward downtown, back toward the office where we lived. "He was doing this totally weird thing to my hand while we were talking, though," I said. "He kept putting it on his mouth, but he didn't, do anything with his lips. He just touched us together, like this." I took Tada's hand and connected the back of it with the lower half of my face. It's kind of like this. "Yes," Tada laughed. "I think he was very drunk. He was kissing you." "He was kissing me?" I asked. "What do you mean? Why was he doing it like that?" "Because," Tada said, "that's how we do it." "Do what?" I asked. "Kiss? What do you mean that's how you do it?" I clucked my tongue. "That's how we do it," he says. But then when we were inside at the party and the refugees had asked me to show them how people from Ohio like me kiss each other to say hello, I spent 20 minutes trying to show them how to pucker their lips, and no matter how long we worked on it, they somehow just kept failing to replicate the gesture I was making. "Hold on!" I stopped Tada and put my hands up like, "Wait a minute," and raised my voice. "That's how you guys kiss? With your faces totally straight and relaxed like that?" "Yes," he said. "Oh, really?" Tada stood on the side of the road, on the other side of my exclamation, speechless and tense. I was, suddenly, screeching at him. "You really don't pucker your lips like this?" "No," he said. "Didn't you notice at the party that we didn't know what we were doing?" "Yes," I said, "but it never occurred to me that that was why." "Why not?" he asked. The answer is because I just could not have imagined that. Because for all of the distance between our worlds, with the landmine dodging and the child soldiering and the starving on rice soup and midnight burning refugee camps and murdered fathers, this shit was crazy. "I just can't believe that," I said. "Do you ever open your mouths?" "No." "Ever? Really?" "No," he said. "And you don't use your tongues?" "I have seen that," Tada offered. "In movies." "In movies!" I exploded. "Are you seriously telling me that you guys don't kiss with your mouths open ever or use your tongues?" Clearly he was seriously telling me that, but I couldn't stop screaming. He laughed self-consciously and at me. "No, we don't do it," he he shouted back, "I didn't know that people really do that." When we got home, I tore into the house yelling for my roommate, Esso. I found him in bed. When I flipped on the lights, he looked out at me from behind his mosquito net, groggily alarmed in his underwear. "When you kiss your girlfriend, do you ever open your mouth?" I demanded. Esso relaxed his head back down and tisked. "That's just Hollywood," he said. "That is not just Hollywood," I shrieked. "People really do that all the time." For the record, when Yale researchers released a sexual behavior study of 190 societies in 1951, it reported that 4% of those societies didn't kiss. The Balinese, for example, instead brought their faces close enough to breathe in each other's warmth and smell. Some South African Tongans, who caught sight of Europeans kissing a few decades earlier, had exclaimed, "Look at these people, they eat each other's saliva and dirt." So, though Frenching is older than the Kama Sutra, it is not universal, and my acting like everyone had always been doing it all the time was not exactly justified. Even Alfred Kinsey, in his 1953 Sexual Behavior in the Human Female, found that as few as 80% of American women who had had premarital sex had French, which is to say that 20% of them had had premarital sex without Frenching. But I digress. I had just been screaming at a groggy refugee, "That is not just Hollywood. People really do that all the time." My roommate made a face of mild interest. His reaction to our cultural makeout divide was somewhat less dramatic than mine. He said, "Oh, really?" And then he rolled over and went back to sleep.